you all a little bit on. Oh, you okay? And so my name is Lieke Belen. I'm from the Netherlands. Live in The Hague. I do have a background in industrial design engineering in Delft. So I'm a designer or engineer. It depends on how you want to describe it. But yeah, I rolled it like I have been working in the legal field now since a few years. And sorry, yeah, I'm getting distracted by the messages in my image. Um, anyway, I started a few years ago in the legal field when I met a lawyer who was working on plain legal language. And I was then freelancing as a UX designer and visual thinker. And we were wondering what we could do with, yeah, with visualization in contracts. And then we came across a competition from The Hague, which is the Hague Innovators Challenge. And we applied for the challenge and we actually won the second prize. And that was in 2015. And we won with the project of the privacy on the internet. And that was all about how we could indeed make privacy more understandable and especially also what to explore what we can do with visualizations in legal documents. So by doing research on how people deal with privacy on the internet, we looked into what are triggers for getting more aware of that and how we can use that in a legal document. And that's how we took the privacy statement of Facebook as an example and as a case study to redesign that version. So that's what we worked on one-on-one for about a year, actually. So it's quite a deep, a long collaboration for that project. And that's what at the end of the collaboration, we delivered the prototype that you can also still find on the website. I will show you around in a bit on the website so that you can later also look at like read back to it. But anyway, that was my first experience with working with a lawyer one-on-one, and that was quite a challenge. So after that year of collaborating and after finishing that project, when we had finally had a tangible document, like a tangible product or concept for how a visual legal document could look like, we finally were ready to go to the market, of course, or at least that was my idea for like, let's. So yeah, the collaboration quit. I'm not working with this lawyer anymore. Anyway, but I did go to law firms with that prototype or that concept to see if we could sell it. And that was quite challenging still. But that was also exactly the birth of visual contracts, of how I set up visual contracts as a platform. So, visual contracts is a platform to bring together lawyers and designers and people from different backgrounds in order to collaborate from a legal design thinking perspective. So I guess you maybe already heard a little bit about legal design and legal design thinking, but I will show you a little bit about what that is about in a second. Anyway, that's how I started to just indeed grow my community with visual contracts, to really grow the platform and to start changing the mindset. That's actually the main point of what I discovered from going to market that early already, and still at the moment it's still happening. Like legal design is of course very new still, although it has already gained much more traction than when I started in 2015, or in 2015, I wasn't even talking about legal design. From 2016, I was starting to a little bit on that perspective. So things have definitely already changed into more of a market of legal design, but still also for visual contracts, we're still very much at the beginning. And that mindset change is very, very important. So just already to fast forward a little bit to the journey right now where we stand. So last year was quite a challenge, but I grew with my team. I did have 2 employees, and now I'm going back to working alone, Although I'm not alone, because I'm also working still a lot with freelancers and also with a new business partner to really focus on the software development also for visual contracts. So it's really, yeah, this startup, it's all about innovation, I would say, and growing like a community to see how we can actually change legal field and making it more human-centered and more accessible for everyone. So I will share my screen for a second. And by the way, if you have any questions, please ask them. I don't know if you have, if you did think of like 2 questions at the end, but if it's up to me, it's also fine to get questions in between. But anyway, so here we are. Oh, it's like, yeah. So here, I'm just going to show you around a little bit on the website, because there's a lot of information to find. And I thought to use that as my presentation for now. And so here you already see we work very visual, and we are making legal content understandable to build sustainable relationships. So let me go, I have already here a little bit about what legal design thinking is and why I'm talking also about building sustainable relationships. And then I'm immediately focusing on the proactive law, or actually maybe in essence first, what is legal design thinking all about? I was already saying like, okay, the mindset change is very important. And then mindset change comes from that legal design thinking is really a cross-disciplinary field, or this cross-disciplinary methodology, more or less, or an approach. So these are the different methods that we define currently as the legal design thinking approaches or disciplines within legal design thinking. And here is the main, currently our definition, because still the definition of what legal design thinking is definitely still in development. But we define it right now as understanding the context and needs of people interacting with law to adjust mindset, documents, and services that deliver legal empowerment and access to justice for all. So this is currently our definition. There's definitely people that have a different definition, and this is something that we will keep on developing, of course, by learning, by doing a lot of projects and learning. So I will tell you in a little bit more about design thinking, the design thinking loop, but visual thinking, as I said, is also one part that is very essential within legal design thinking. It's not necessarily the only way, you know, a lot of people associate legal design with just the visuals or visual design or images, but it's much more than that. And that's exactly why I'm also calling it legal design thinking, because that refers to the design thinking element in legal design thinking. But still, of course, visualization, the whole point of using visual thinking and visualization is that it can help you to figure out the relations within a complex story. And by visualizing them, you make it more tangible. So you make it easier to explain it then in a different medium than what you can do with text. Also UX design, so user experience design, that's of course the web design approach, or not necessarily, because of course user experience design can also definitely apply for services in the intangible part, but mainly regularly UX design is referred to for the digital experience. So that's also why we are focusing on that here, like creating engaging online user experiences. Then I'll come back to proactive law. So co-creation, as I already said, it's multidisciplinary, solving problems in multidisciplinary and diverse teams. So just working from a legal field, legal point of view, or just from a design point of view, you will not reach the full legal design perspective. And now I'm just mentioning 2. But obviously, like also in projects that we work on, yeah, there are people from branding, communication involved often. Yeah, it could be HR if it's about an employment contract. So it depends, of course, also on what area you're working in. So in a privacy statement, of course, a privacy officer. or other people that are dealing then with the customer service. Maybe that is also depending on if you're working on business to business or business to consumer, of course. Anyway, it is about different people with different backgrounds working together and collaborating in order to come up with the best solution, because it's like broader than not only focusing on the legal perspective. Then plain legal language is of course very helpful next to the UX design and the visual thinking part. And then proactive law is indeed one thing that I wanted to point out, because also during the course of the time that I have been exploring this whole field, the legal field, I came across that the legal field actually has this proactive law movement going on as well. Proactive law and preventive law, which is just more the, indeed, as it says, proactive approach that focuses on not only, or maybe the preventive approach is more about preventing conflicts. Proactive law goes even further than that by really focusing on that strategic alignment and sustainable relationships, and really building more, better relationships indeed, and doing that proactively. So that's definitely a mindset shift. Also, if you are dealing with how do you write your clauses in a document, if you want to focus on documents, legal documents. And then design thinking, as I said, I think I have it open now, not here. Here it is open. So design thinking is an approach of, like, it's the design process. It's used to develop new products and services. And it exists of 5 or 6 phases. I'm not going to count. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 phases. Well, I'm also, it's late for me. You know, I have already had a busy day. But anyway, the point is that you see in the loop already, the point is that you iterate through this process. So usually or often, you start with empathizing. So really imagining what are the needs of the user, or the needs of the people that you design for. That's the first question and the thing that you want to research, just as what I said, how I started in the privacy statement, with the privacy statement of Facebook. We first started to reach out to people, to consumers, on how they deal with privacy on the internet. And with that, there are lots of different types of research methods, like design research methods, which are part of that. And it's just more than just going, you can start obviously by reaching out to people, but just know that there's a whole discipline of design research that backs up this whole phase of empathize. So once you know then a little bit better what the context is and the people that you design for, then you can maybe redefine your problem statement. So in essence, to make it a little bit concrete, if we're talking about an employment contract, obviously you can state that, the employment contract needs to establish the relationship, the agreements between, the agreements between the employer and employee. But maybe it goes even further about that it defines your relationship between the employer and the employee. So it really matters how you exactly define your problem. And if you go deeper behind the problem behind the problem, you can design, or you have a better vision in place in order to come up with good design. That, of course, goes back to your empathize phase, where you usually have your inspiration from. And then if you have defined your new problem statement, you can start ideating, brainstorming ideas. That can go from totally new ideas and how you can totally define new contracts or contracting or establishing relationships between employer and employee, if we stick to the employer and employment contract idea. Or it can go so as far as, okay, we have the different clauses, how can we design those in a different way? That's, of course, very much more specific and detailed. But the real innovation, of course, can come from, stating your design phase very, more open, and come up with totally new ideas. But then the point is, of course, like when you can have lots of ideas, you need to prototype them to make them more concrete. And that's, of course, to be able to test it with your end user, and you come back to the empathize phase. So also design research covers also how you do prototyping, like usability testing, for example, is one way. That could be like you can observe, you can still also do interviews with your concept. But the whole point is that this product over here, your concept over here is not finished. And this is what I encounter is very like the special phase in legal design thinking, or at least what my experience is with working with lawyers. Because you are trained as lawyers to be complete and correct. And that's, of course, how the law works. So from a design perspective, you really want to have a not finished product because you want to gain feedback and insights in order to improve your product or contract or whatever we are talking about that we're designing. And from a legal point of view, you're looking into like, what do I need to cover? Like what is, yeah, that's what you get taught. And I'm very glad that more and more universities are picking up on the legal design thinking process and integrating that into their courses in order to teach that and to get more practice into this way of thinking, because it's a totally, this is really where you get in trouble if you have if you or you can get in, let's say like it's not per definition, but this is a challenging phase if you start with all beginner legal design legal designers, so or a multidisciplinary team, then that is where the mindset shift plays a role very much. And once you have gone through this cycle once, then you can get started on this way, new way of thinking, and then you can start practicing, of course, your skills in that, because one time you have some basic understanding of how the process goes, and then you can further build up on your skills. So just to give you one example, that's why I took up this, which you can find in the studio under portfolio. You can find also different projects. But I thought let's take out this user-friendly NDA that we designed for Airbus Defense in Space. And here the challenge was, so here you see that like it was a user-friendly NDA for startups. So obviously Airbus is an it's a very big corporate, of course, and they are doing a lot of innovation because they have to also, in order to keep relevant. And for that reason, they work with startups. And that point of getting to start or to explore and to start working with startups, obviously for startups, that's quite a huge, opportunity, of course, very nice. But on the other hand, it's also challenging for them because they have an innovation and they want to protect that as well. Or they want to have the guarantee that Airbus is not just going to walk away with their innovation, obviously. So this is where the first steps in the relationship of collaborating between a startup that usually doesn't have a lot of legal resources, at least not compared to how many legal resources Airbus has. This generates just some tension, of course, or like the questions on how Airbus will deal with the information that they share, that the startup shares with Airbus. So this was the point, like even in the process, Airbus did consider to totally get rid of NDAs. But in the end, we found out via user research, via interviewing and having conversations with startups, that they actually do want to have this document in place exactly for that part of trust and to have some security of what exactly is Airbus going to do with their information. And how can they protect it? Like what are you going to do? So here on the left side, you see the first version of that was actually already a little bit rewritten in a little bit better language, or it was already looked at like how can we make this make this easier. And then also this version, obviously you see that, well, it's still quite a dense document. But that's at some point we had those workshops together with Airbus, with the whole team. There were engineers, there were lawyers, there were designers. And with this whole group, we went through this process of redesigning the no, the MDA. And so this was the first prototype, which we then tested with the users, with the startups, obviously, those are the users in this case. And that's when we came up with this one, which we also tested. And in the end, I don't know the exact numbers again, but the main thing, there were people were smiling when they were going through this, which is not exactly the typical way of like going through an NDA usually. So yeah, that was something that also still Airbus is, that is one of the other, like, this is one achievement, big achievement. This whole project won an award of the IACCN in 2019, I think already. So that was mainly for this new approach that also Airbus took up, like what I was just explaining about legal design thing, that whole process. We went through that process and people went through that mindset shift. And that's what still is going on in Airbus. You know, still it's a big corporate. So you can imagine that really making big change that costs time. You cannot just change something like that, like corporate business that has quite some rigid processes. Yeah, you cannot just change that like that. But yeah, they still benefit from that project. And they have really inspired, like the legal team here has inspired the whole company in doing their legal contracts in a different way. So if you are interested in a different time, this is a video where you can see Ines Kurtjes and me and Astrid Koolmeijer talking about this whole process in more detail. So then you can learn more about this whole process and why Airbus wanted to do this. In the meantime, are there any questions? Shall I go on? I can go on, but okay. So for now, just as another different example, our own privacy statement. I don't know if I can zoom out on it. So this is our own privacy statement after like last year, the website.
David, I have one little question.
Yes, of course.
So you said that people were smiling while they were reading the NDA, right? How do you prove that they've actually understood more from this contract than the other contract? Like obviously the other one wasn't very appealing, so maybe they didn't pay any attention to it. But how would you prove it? Like maybe like they asked for numbers. How would you did you mention this and I missed it, or?
So actually, Ines Kurtjes from Airbus, she did actually put, like, there's such a tool. This is, I mean, one way to test it. Ines, she ran it through like the old document that we originally had and the new document through the test, which I cannot recall the name of, but in the video we explained that. And the point is that it's sort of the readability score. So this is what we saw from that test, that the readability score definitely went up. I think at least doubled. This is also what I'm now saying out loud. I don't know exactly. I need to watch back the video for that, but you can watch it back there. That's one way to test it, of course, such a test where you can just go over the readability factors. But this is also in prototype testing. You can actually also do the comparative test of, and then it's like doing proper like scientific research, more or less. That is something that, for example, Stefania Passera also did in her PhD on what visualizations in contracts can do. We didn't do it, of course, that deeply as in a PhD, in a scientific research, but this is something that indeed, as visual contracts, we are continually looking for how can we keep on building on that and achieving that type of testing. But in essence, with prototype testing, this is exactly something that you build in indeed. And for example, cannot switch that easily now to that project, but in the academy you can also find the project from my former employee and teammates from Andrea Montella. She redesigned also, or she also came up for her graduation. She graduated as visual contracts, and for that project she also redesigned an employment contract. And in that employment contract in itself, she actually also built in some tests to see how people respond on how did they actually understand the clauses or the things that they read. So obviously this is just building in tests, doing prototype testing also in the beginning, I would say. That's a little bit more, it's more qualitative testing so that you can improve your design. And then indeed the more quantitative testing with the tests like also that readability score or the, like I would say like this is something that we are looking into, how can we make sure that we, like what Google also, how Google built their translation tools. Like let people test and fill out what they understand from a certain clause in just in a small exercise. You can understand and by that improve your design again. And then of course test how well people understand what you mean with it. But this is something also, yeah, the PhD of Stefania, she also explained several methods on how to measure that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And by the way, you know, we are focusing mostly now on selling, you know, on the business side. So we first also need to sell and make more projects like this in order to start measuring what the outcome is. Otherwise, we cannot test it really. So that is the, yeah, people are already asking for our results, of course, while we are still designing the new standard. So that's sometimes the chicken and egg problem that we cannot always already solve. But we are happy that more and more examples are showing up. So we can also, yeah, use each other's examples. Like in the 20 next week, we have a meetup with Camilla Anderson she's a professor in Australia. And she actually works on comic book contracts. And she's actually also doing a lot, like she's a professor at the university. So she's also focusing a lot on doing research on what the effects are of, in that case, comic book contracts. But I expected a lot of, yeah, there's similarities, maybe not 100%. That would be very interesting. Also, what are the differences between these type of designs versus comic book contracts? We are not really doing that much of comic book contracts these days, but that's really also depending on the clients that you work for, I would say.
Yeah.
But anyway, that being said, like from visual contracts, we really want to do the impact measurement side. We want to integrate that, but we're now more at growing the business first. So this is our privacy statement that we, like last year, we redesigned our whole website because we had some time left because projects were being postponed, etc. So that was also very nice because we finally were able to summarize all the learnings that we had in our website right now. And also then do a redesign of our privacy statement, our own privacy statement. So here is you see on this side, like it starts, well, you know, first of all, you see the overview with all the essential elements of the privacy statement. And I have my Zoom thing it's in the way. But also here you have some navigation toolbar and the index where you can always come back to. And you can navigate via your right clicking on these main topics. But the essential thing is, of course, that you can either go also step by step or just click in the visual to go to a certain area. So if we just stick to the step-by-step tour, then here first your rights are being explained for privacy. So for the right to be informed, so the GDPR, I mean, then, right? So the right to be informed, the right to object, the right to access, and you can click through it, and we have visualized it a little bit. So this is the point of making it a little bit more accessible in a way. And on the side you have the more deeper information if you would need it. So here the purpose of what is the purpose of for us for collecting data, but also explaining when we collect your data with details here. And how we collect your data, like in an active way or in a passive way, like both you need to get some consent, but there's obviously some things that you actively, like if you fill out a form, that is more an active way of, or if you call us or email us, that's an active way of data that we collect next to the passive way of like cookies, etc., which you still need to consent on, but it's more passive. And then the most important part, the overview of what data exactly is being collected. We split that up in the different services or the different types, like offering a service, or is it under marketing and communication, or is it for improving our company, or is it just part of our core business operations? That's how we split up these parts of the data that we collect. So like community membership or signing up for an event, and you can then click through that. And then those actually, we did post them here, like the download materials. We do have download materials, but we don't actually collect personal data in that. We kept that anonymous. We just asked for a country and expertise and professional background. So yeah, those two are like more anonymous data that we collect. But we wanted to keep that here in place in order to be transparent on what we are doing. And then, of course, explaining a little bit of like, okay, but what's happening on the back end of things? This is something that, of course, usually is not being explained in the privacy statement. And still, we keep it very high level. But anyway, that part is also something like, for example, that we try to really focus on using, especially with the new GDPR rulings, etc., that we try to choose the tools that are based in Europe because of GDPR ruling. That is like, I don't know if you know about that, but as soon as now, at this moment, if you transfer data to like personal data to the US, it's actually by standard not compliant with the GDPR anymore, which is of course very undoable. Like, how can you do that? Like, we are already in Zoom, so this is not already compliant, GDPR compliant officially. But yeah, that's like the question, like how do we solve that? It's a different discussion. And then of course, end of a relationship, like what if you want to delete the data or transfer the data, you need to be able to do that, of course. So yeah, that is a little bit an example. I still wanted to go also over this, like, zoom out a little bit. So the whole point of what we have been learning ourselves is how people learn or what their learning journey is when they start with legal design thinking. So we split that up in several phases, and we named those phases like people, like the characters for that. So the first start, what we see until now, is mostly that people start observe, look around, like for example, look around, like read maybe some blogs and some portfolios and a website, like for visual contracts, for example, to see what it is all about. And that's what we call the observer stage. Like they have heard about legal design thinking, and then, okay, let's learn a little bit, look a little bit about that. And so we over here, we show like, okay, for example, we offer for that the blogs, our portfolio, and our free academy content. Then when they think like, okay, but now I'm interested, I really want to get started, I want to do something, then we offer the first small step. For example, monthly meetups, like the one from next week with the Australian professor that we invite other legal designers to get to learn a little bit more, or start with the 120 days of legal design, which is an email program, which every day for 120 days, you get an email that is building up your knowledge to read about legal design thinking, and not only read, but also get some videos and materials, etc. And then also, for example, the white paper on visual employment contracts that we wrote. So then we say, like, you're sort of in the explorer phase, you're really looking around, taking a little bit more effort. But then this is the most important phase, if people really get to learn about legal design thinking is when they start really doing something like, or for example, training. So that is what we have over here. Like we have different tools and trainings in order to train people in legal design thinking. And the whole point is that you need to get your hands dirty. Learning by doing, that's really the legal design thinking. You cannot learn just from books. Designing, you need to do in order to experience, like what I said with those phases, like the loop. You really, the first time that you go through this loop, then you have the first understanding of this, how this process more or less goes. And then you actually can only get started. So people that just have had a class, or that what I'm doing now, I would say like after this, you are maybe a little bit, maybe depending on what you're doing next, you're in observer versus explorer phase, more or less. And then only if you get started yourself and make your hands dirty to try it out with the tools that we provide, maybe, then you can really get into the transformer phase and like that things start to click, like, this is how it works. But then still, you have the beginner skills. And by co-creation and doing, start doing more and more. And that's why we also offer that co-creation project. Right now, we're not really planning already soon, but this is something that we did before, like with other community members, to really co-create. And once you have some certain experience, at some point you become in the ninja state where you can actually really take up client projects and start selling your own projects in that. So I wanted to show you that to give you a little bit of an idea of what this whole journey is of learning about legal design thinking. And then the last part that I want to share is the community part. As I said already, community, like the whole point of this multidisciplinary collaboration is about collaborating and sharing knowledge and skills in order to, to bring this whole legal design thinking movement forward. So that's why we open our community. You can also, if you want, you can join. It's like in the LinkedIn here on the bottom of the page. Here you see the link to our LinkedIn group. That is the main group right now that we, where we connect and where we try to connect people in order to just exchange knowledge and learn from each other. So I'm welcoming you all to join that. So I'll end my talk here and let me know if you have any questions.
I do have some questions. I really like design, so that's why I'm not really into legal. But I really like design. Like I'm studying the BBA. I'm in third year. So I really like design, and I really think that maybe this is helpful. Do you think that like companies really, like, for example, you mentioned something earlier about like policy statement and so on, like this is very interesting for us, like the users or the clients, right? But maybe it's not that interesting for them. Like, how would you leverage this?
So indeed, I think you need to, this is also why I shifted from, or not maybe that is the main reason, but I shifted in 2018 towards, from privacy statements and privacy in general, more towards employment contracts, because I feel like the mission of visual contracts is really to make law and justice more accessible to people. And I do feel that privacy is such an abstract and technical topic. And still, like, the whole point of privacy is that you really need to build it in from the core, like really that privacy by default and privacy by design principle that is really at the end of the company, which is more about all the operations and processes, how people, like the choices that you're making, in how you, like what I said in our privacy statement ourselves, we say like we try to choose anyway to use only the tools that are based in Europe, for example, even though that's just one way to do it, you know, and we're still keeping on, like I just today with my new co-founder, we went over the whole privacy and security part again. And this is something to keep on evaluating. That's the whole point of privacy. You need to keep on working on it. And I think maybe that counts for a lot of legal topics actually. But the point is that privacy on the consumer side or the user side, but especially on the consumer side, this is something from an ethical point of view that business needs to take up that responsibility. Next, or at least from our point of view, let's say that.
Yeah,
But that's
like
also
what
where
I've seen is that like the NDA, obviously you want everyone to understand it, right? Because otherwise
exactly,
there might be
yes,
like
exactly those
complications.
type of contracts. Then you're really, it is also different. Like a legal doc or privacy statement is a statement. It's an informative document from it's one side, but a contract, like indeed doing
It's
business
both.
with like a
Yeah.
giant as Airbus, as a small startup, yeah, you want to have a good agreement, of course. And that's the same as in employment contracts. And that's where I see like so many people, you know, employment, that's where also still like still you could more or less expect that a startup is higher educated, that like they can maybe manage themselves, but the most vulnerable groups are in that position where this power balance is really at place, which is in a lot of like right now we are actually working on employment contracts for a cleaning company, like the cleaning branch or sector. And in the Netherlands, and I expect this is maybe not only in the Netherlands, but in the Netherlands anyway, the cleaning sector has the highest rates of illiteracy levels. So obviously, like people from different countries come to the Netherlands, they totally don't speak Dutch, which I totally can imagine because Dutch is not exactly a very easy language. But in general, that's where, of course, they enter into this work relationship and this work agreement, and they cannot read the language. So then you even have a legal document. So yeah, how do you do that? So this is the part where I do see so much more value, and this is exactly like our client. It's one of the biggest companies in the Netherlands, also actually, the cleaning company. And in those type of businesses, they see the value, of course, because they deal, especially in the cleaning sector, they deal with these people. They do that daily already. They already have to communicate all the time with, like, keeping in mind that they don't speak like the B1 level Dutch. So
Okay. Yeah, makes total
still,
sense.
but still, this is also one of the challenges for visual contracts. Like from the social impact perspective, it's totally logical. But from the business perspective, it's way harder to find the exact business cases because a lot of still also lawyers, they still say like, yeah, but yeah, we just talk with lawyers. So why there's no problem.
Yeah,
But
that's
we
my
do,
that was my second question.
yeah. Well, we actually also, for example, from the legal counsel from Airbus, or she's the commercial contract head commercial contract. She she also said like, yeah, but even lawyers don't always understand what other lawyers are writing. And this not she's not the only one that said that. It's just in general, like things are being made so it's so complex, which actually is also a cost. Like this is actually, if we go then I go back to the IACCM, or now it's World Commerce and Contracting, I think they changed their name. um, they have found they showed the nine, I think the nine principles or the nine costs that are coming from complexity in contracts. So, or nine, I'm just saying nine, but now I'm thinking it was 9%. Like people, we're losing value in business because contracts are drafted in a complex way. So there definitely also is that business case. But still, like if we talk about this type of visualization, there's of course all this type of the gradation in how much visualization do you use, or are you just structuring your document and making it more readable by just applying a better type font and some hierarchy in that.
Yeah.
That already can do a lot.
Okay. Thank you very much for explaining.
Yeah,
Because this is maybe something that you get all the time, like
sure, it's okay. That's
like they can.
that's why I'm doing this. I do get, of course, a lot of this. Like one of the main questions that I also get, it's like, is a visual contract legally binding? Like people then they think like, but they're like the point is there's contract freedom, and that's where people are just more not used to this way of contracting.
Yeah.
That is the biggest challenge that we have, that we need to overcome. That it's just not, it's new. you know, and then we're talking about a product that needs to provide security. So that is the interest for me. That's an interesting design challenge.
Obviously. Okay,
Any
do
other
you guys
questions?
have any questions?
Yes, I want to make a question. Looking, you have showed us before the contract with Airbus.
Mm-hmm.
How much does it take for you or for your team to make actually like a visual contract of those characteristics?
So, as I already said, like, let me see if I do have it open somewhere. Yeah. So now let me go here. So as I already said, this thing was already, or at least this one, I don't know, and I think I'm that, but I think this one was already redrafted by a small team, I think of a few lawyers. When we were in this phase, like going from this one to this one, we were with a team of, I would say, about 20 people that were working. Like, but obviously it's also corporate business. So in total, we were like, so this is not exactly the exact time that we worked on it, but the lead time was like over a year because of the whole, it's all about the collaboration, like having all those different perspectives, also doing prototype testing, of course, but also getting all the people involved, getting approvals from, like if you work in a corporate business, you have to get approvals from different people in the organization. So they can also block the whole progress of the whole process. So like if I have to like put it back, like what is the actual time that we spend on it? I would say, and that's a little bit of an estimation, I don't exactly know, but I think it's like, let's say 5 weeks. 5
Okay.
weeks full-time
So
work.
that's actually not that long.
No, but that, like it took a year in order to
Collect all the information.
Yeah, no, it's and to work with the corporate business in a team perspective.
Uh-huh.
It's just all the organizational challenges that you need to deal with as well, and that mindset shift. So it's not about, and that is part of the design process as well. So I'm saying then 5 weeks, but maybe that is indeed not possible even because you need to take into account that mindset shift.
Okay.
But that's the point, like it's not just, it's all done in collaboration, in co-creation. And it's not that we are designing this for them, we are really designing it with them. So sometimes maybe at a point at the end and some points we are of course then finishing up some things or maybe preparing some things so that they can move faster. But in the end, they are really part of the design process. Like some of the sketches somewhere here were really sketched out by some other people in the team that were not me or Astrid Kool, my colleague, legal designer.
Okay. One other question. Do you think universities might include a subject um, like of legal design or
100%. I already know that.
Oh, okay. So you've seen like cases in which like universities have already included this subject?
In Madrid, I actually trained, oh no, I need to, Maria Jesus Gonzalez, no, I think, I'm not sure if I'm saying it correct. She's from,
Okay.
in a, also my Spanish is rough. It's a long time ago that I spoke Spanish, but the Instituto Innovación Legal, I think.
Okay.
IEL, yeah, Instituto Innovación Legal. I trained them already in 2016, I believe, or 17. Or maybe 18 now, I don't know the years, but anyway, she is definitely, they are definitely working also with universities in Madrid. So I can look that up. I don't know exactly how, but that's how it's happening in Madrid. And if I talk about the Netherlands, so yes, there are definitely universities and universities of applied sciences mostly integrating legal design thinking already as courses in and minors. Like that is still ongoing. It's in progress, but we, with Corona, there have some things changed. But in the end, there are definitely already courses or projects happening within universities on legal design. Yeah.
Crazy. Perfect. No, it's nice to hear because sometimes like, well, I don't know. As I said, I like design and so on, and I think it's very useful.
Yeah.
Actually, I think if we ask any of the participants that are here today, they will say that they don't understand a lot of the contracts, even if they're studying law. And imagine the people that are doing the BBA like me. Sometimes we have hard time understanding them as well, because
Yeah.
it's a whole different language sometimes.
Yes.
And so making it visually it's very nice, but it's also, like as you said, like time consuming in a way, to actually make it nice. So yeah, I don't
Yeah, but
know.
there I would definitely say it's all about knowing the principles of design and then the co-creation. So co-creation is the key for having like different perspectives and having new perspectives on board, like not just, well, maybe that's maybe already, like if you're still studying, you're maybe not as drilled as some really like lawyers that are really already in the field for several times. They are really like, whew, this is how it goes. It's much harder to break open your mindset then, of course, than that you're already doing and integrating it now. But anyway, still, it's about having the different perspective. Like even in my own team, where I work with 3 designers, like or me, myself, and then over myself and 2 other designers with different backgrounds and also different personalities. You still have different views, even though you're all understanding design.
Uh-huh.
So even then you already see that. But this is where indeed the point is indeed of not only, yeah, to really come from cross-disciplinary collaboration. And then indeed, as I said, knowing the principles of design, that is the first, like one other question that I often get is like, what tools can you use? What should you use to get started or with legal design or visual contracting? And then I always say, start with sketching or with the design principles. And sketching is one way to open your mindset and to get started on drawing in the first place. And that's the creativity that you need to adopt in order to design in a better way. Um, so, and then indeed the process that I showed you with the loop, the design loop. So asking other people's, um, yeah, other people's opinion, not only opinions, but more doing the observations and really getting to know who you're designing for and in what context is changing your perspective a lot in order to come up with a totally different design. So those are next to just the more visual principles of design that are also good. Then, you can give anyone any tool, but if you don't know the principles of design, you cannot come up with a good design, even if you have some tool available. And then still, that being said, yes, Canva is indeed easy to use, but I, as a designer, I'm not a fan of that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you
You're
guys
welcome.
have any other questions? I believe you made yourself clear.
Okay. If you have any other questions, yeah, feel free to join the community, the LinkedIn group, and
Uh-huh.
ask your questions there. You're always happy. I'm always happy also to answer them there. And thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for this webinar. I think it was so much fun and interesting to learn more about these things.
Good.
And yeah, so hope that everyone like it.
Thank you. It was nice to be here. Thanks
I
for the
think it
invite.
was very interesting to actually learn about like how to make legal, like some maybe people didn't realize that we could actually do this with contracts. So it's very revolutionary, and having you explain it, it was an honor.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, guys. So thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Good
And
day.
thank you for